Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to show you how to play the major scale in every key on the guitar. And with color music, it's super easy because you can literally see how all keys are basically the same since they follow the same symmetrical pattern in music. For context, check out my video, The Guitar Fretboard Explained. The link is in the notes below, because it shows you how the instrument is basically formed from three fundamental patterns. 1, the chromatic scale rising up each string. 2, the circle of fifths sequence cascading down each fret. And 3, the major scale pattern found at the intersection between, which musicians then use to navigate the fretboard. Together, these three patterns are so important that they form what you might call the holy trinity of music, which the colors reveal is a beautiful and intricate tapestry of visible sound. It's a pattern, like I say, that you can navigate using the major scale, like this C major scale, for example, with its interval pattern of whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. It forms this fundamentally satisfying sequence of notes. And once you understand the layout and logic of these notes, it's easy for your fingers to move around, jumping from one note to the next in a sequence that leads like a series of stepping stones along a clear and coherent path. I mean, there's no need for guesswork here, or to count frets, or to memorize finger positions, because the colors clearly highlight which pitch is which, as well as the intervals between these notes. So you aren't flying blind, but can see exactly what you're playing and why. And what's cool is that once you've played this pattern in one area on the fretboard, you can branch out further to play it in other positions too, and in more efficient ways like this. By dividing the scale into segments like this, and by moving between strings, you can play this pattern even more swiftly since your hand maintains a tighter range of motion as you go. So in other words, you can cover a wide range of pitches in a much smaller space, which is awesome. This is the same scale as before, C major, but it's now condensed into fewer frets to save your hand a bit of time and energy so it doesn't have to cover so much physical distance. And what's better is that once you understand the guitar's design, you can go further still by repeating the same scale on even more strings like this. It's not complicated because all you have to do is just move your hand a little and every note is the same as before, laid out in the same sequence with all the same intervals, albeit in a higher octave and with a slight shift in the top two strings, as I explained in the previous video. Again, the link is in the notes below. And just like that, you can make your way around the fretboard with ease, fret by fret and string by string, moving with total confidence as the colors illuminate your way, plotting your path so you can move in all directions. In fact, if we expand our range of motion even more, the colors continue to highlight this same pattern in even more octaves along the fretboard, so you can move swiftly across the strings with a clear sense of where your fingers should go. It's beautiful, right? And honestly, I could just sit here playing the C major scale all day long since it sounds so nice. But after a while, that would also start to sound pretty boring, of course, since C major is only one scale in a total of 12 keys. So if we stuck with this pattern alone, it would be pretty limiting and frankly turn us into a bunch of one-trick ponies, which we are not and don't have to be, as it turns out, because we can use the colors to pick out other scales in all the other keys as well, to expand our palette even more in order to move around the fretboard with even greater ease. For example, to play the G major scale, all we have to do is start on a G note, like this one on the bottom string, and then go from there, following the same pattern of whole step and half step intervals. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. It sounds familiar, right? Because really there's no difference between this G major scale and the C major scale played before it. Because although the specific notes are unique, the underlying intervals are the same, making both scales virtually identical. And what's cool is that we can play this G major scale in other positions too, like this. And like this. And like this too. So the G major scale extends up and down the fretboard, just like C major does in the key of C. It's crazy, actually, how these two keys overlap within this matrix of the guitar fretboard and essentially share the same space. Which is great because with two keys you have more options to choose from to pick out melodies, chords, and progressions, as we do in other videos. But what's even better, what's totally nuts, is that you can play these same patterns in every key, so that all 12 keys overlap within this same space. And using color, you can see the symmetry between them, because the same consistent patterns appear in the same consistent way from one key to the next, where each one simply starts on a different note. So the D major scale begins on D, for example, while the A major scale starts on A, the E major scale starts on E, and so on. So you can hear and see this for yourself. I'll play through a few of these scales, and notice how they all follow the same consistent pattern of intervals no matter where you are on the fretboard. I'll start again with C major and play that scale in a few different positions. Then I'll shift through the keys of G, D, and A so you can get a feel for the identical and therefore predictable structure of each. The key of C. The key of G. The key of D. The key of A. Okay, so that was keys C, G, D, and A. And all of them are essentially the same pattern, though they all look and sound a little different as you move through the spectrum of color and sound. And if you want to play all 12 keys yourself and learn a lot more about how the guitar works than I can show you in this video, then check out my course, Guitar Theory in Full Color, a visual guide to songwriting. Because in those lessons, I go into much more detail about the symmetry of all 12 keys, with step-by-step instructions, loads of quizzes and exercises, and more. But to begin, you can see here how the fretboard is amazing, right? Where all the keys are intricately interwoven into one array, where you can easily see and play these patterns since they all follow the same underlying structure of intervals. And this point is fundamental. In fact, it's so essential to your mastery of music that we'll look more closely at these intervals in the next video using what musicians call scale degrees, or special numbers and symbols used to label and describe these intervals. And as you'll find, like everything else in music, intervals are super simple once you really know how they work. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.